With its often dramatic and generally fatal symptoms, rabies has been a greatly feared virus throughout human history. This has given rise to some strange practices and beliefs surrounding the condition. One of our earliest sources, a poet from the late 1st century BC to the early 1st century AD, expressed the belief that the area under a dog's tongue contains a worm, which if left in the creature could cause madness. This led to incisions being made under the tongues of puppies, a practice which, though inhumane and based on a far-fetched concept, continued into the early 1900s. Pliny the Elder, a physician in the early 1st century, attributed the cause of rabies in dogs to astrological phenomenon. Celsus, on the other hand, another early 1st century physician, believed rabies to be a form of poison, and his treatment recommendations focused on attempts to remove it from the blood of an infected patient. While we know his methods to have been ineffective, this demonstrates an early understanding of the means by which rabies spread, even if the cause of the virus remained unknown. Today we know rabies to be a lyssavirus spread by the saliva or blood of an infected animal. This was proven in 1804 by Georg Gottfried Zink's experimentation with the saliva of a rabid dog as an infectious agent. Pasteur developed an attenuated vaccine, and after demonstrating its effectiveness at immunizing dogs, he used it to successfully treat a human patient, a young boy named Joseph Meister, in 1885. We continue to use vaccination as a primary method of treatment and prevention, and this will be discussed in greater detail later. In Trinidad, in 1923, cattle began dying under mysterious circumstances. These were at first attributed to poisoning, but by July of 1925, the deaths were understood to be caused by an infectious agent. The specific agent, however, remained unknown until 1929 to 1931, when it was understood to be rabies. By this point, however, it had begun to impact the human population as well, with 13 people infected by the beginning of 1930. Why the long period before the identification of the virus? There were several factors. One was the apparent absence of any bites by wild dogs, and the other was the presentation of the virus itself. Rabies, as previously discussed, is a lyssavirus, from a Greek word which denotes a form of madness. However, rabies exists in both a hydrophobic and a paralytic form. Hydrophobia, meaning fear of water, was the name frequently used to express the more dramatic form of the virus that persists in the popular imagination. But the Trinidad outbreak followed the paralytic form, beginning with flu-like symptoms before progressing to paralysis and respiratory complications. This could have led to some difficulty initially identifying the virus as rabies, but the absence of apparent bites is a different story. Trinidad saw its last known canine-to-human rabies infection in 1912, almost 15 years before the 1925 to 1937 outbreak began. With no evidence of a canine link for the human or bovine populations, how could the rabies virus be spreading? Desmodus rotundus, the common vampire bat, was established as the vector, the infection-carrying agent, in the Trinidad outbreak in 1931. With its hematophagous diet and no human ability to fully monitor or quarantine the bat population, it became a reservoir for the infection. This also explains why rabies did not affect the urban population of Trinidad, as people in rural areas were likely to be living in more impoverished conditions and would be more susceptible to vampire bat bites. By the end of the outbreak, 73 people had been infected, and there was a significant impact on the cattle population, which was providing for the livelihood of farmers in the region. This brought about strenuous methods of control, and the final recorded human case in Trinidad marked the end of the outbreak in 1937. While strict quarantines were in place for the canine and feline populations entering Trinidad until 2013, no such method would be effective at preventing infection from a pre-existing population, such as vampire bats. As such, culling, or vampiricide, was introduced, a practice where an anticoagulant is applied to a vampire bat and through social grooming customs kills other bats which come into contact with it. This is by no means a practice free from controversy, as it could upset the biodiversity of the island. Immunizations are another and more environmentally sustainable form of addressing the potential danger of a repeated outbreak, and livestock vaccinations are currently available to the public at no charge through government prevention programs in Trinidad. Rabies remains a frightening condition. Without treatment, the infection is guaranteed to be fatal, and in the words of J.M.S. Pierce, This links the infection with an understandable terror. That, coupled with the dramatic presentation of rabies symptoms, means the overall fear associated with the virus has remained throughout human history. Even in present-day Trinidad, one of the difficulties surrounding educational programs is the level of fear which remains associated with the infection. However, the last 150 years have provided stunning advances in the field of rabies prevention through vaccination and early treatment through inoculation. How to encourage continued use and improvement of the vaccination, as well as treatment methods for later stages of the infection, are the questions that we are tasked with today.